Welcome to another video, yay! So currently what I'm doing at the moment is I'm just taking some home recordings of the Outshine song Back Soundgarden to have a rough run through with just mixing techniques. Already run into plenty of issues, get into that. So started off, so I've got the PV Viper X2 amp, which is a 40 watt amp I think. Very loud, I've got it running on about maybe 2. It's super loud, it just gets louder and it's insane. So I've had to, take it down a bit. Running on to, I'll try and show you. It's a modeling amp, you can run several amp sims. I'm running it on the 6505 channel, the heavy metal version, on the red channel, so lots of distortion. Running about, I don't know, 5.5 pre-gain, 4.5, no, more like 3.5 bass. Sorry, no, bass is more about 7 o'clock. Sorry, not 7 o'clock, about 7 out of 10, 7 out of whatever, you know what I mean. Mids is about the 3.5. Highs around 7-ish as well, I'd say, and so is the post gain. The amp is current, if you can see, it's at an angle because this mic stand I have doesn't reach to have it facing flat. So, bit of an issue, but doing what we can. I initially started off with a AKG condenser mic, this one, right here, this thing, but it was having a lot of issues with clipping, so I've decided to switch it for a SM57, which I don't think is a real SM57 because I got it off eBay for cheap. Yeah, so just trying to help a little bit with the clipping, although I've had to move the mic stand back quite far actually, put it slightly off axis to hopefully reduce the clipping, because it was mostly just the palm muting that was clipping, because that's super bassy, super punk, which is what this amp is very good for. You're trying to record it, you know? Running it right 202, I don't know which gen, I think it's the one before the newest one, but don't quote me on that. And then into my layering logic. Just running it on an empty channel at the moment, just to try and see the levels and if there's any clipping and stuff. Think we've got to the level. I'm also, oh, actually, wait. So I don't know if this is visible, but the gain, I've got very minimal gain, just because it's so loud. It's not clipping so much on the system, but it's so loud that I'm not sure of clipping on the amp, on the mic. So running very gain on here just to stop any digital clip, because we do not want that. Yeah, I'm just going through and recording a couple takes, a couple multi-tracks, just to try and see how close I can get to the tone, if there's any tweaks I need to make. But so far, I'm pretty happy with how this sounds for the Cornell, for the part. So yeah, we'll see how that goes, and I'll be updating as I go along and running into any issues. Update number 1, we're having issues with it still clipping, so I've turned down the post gain and turned up the master to try and keep some of the fullness, but stop that clipping. And I think it, although we'll see, because it's running now. Yeah, so you can't see this, but before it was clipping, and now we've got a bit much better sound wave. Not, but to be honest, at this level, this point, I think I'm just going to take what I can get, and that's going to be it. So, update, had a little issue, but we got most of it done. So initially, it was quite quiet. That was partially just the amp settings, it just wasn't that loud, but I was more concerned about, the clipping and everything, so I decided that I would much rather have it a bit quieter than, pushing the risk of clipping. And I decided that it was going to turn off mid-take for one of them, completely ruining my settings because it's a digital knobs and stuff, and I hadn't saved the preset, so lost it. So I had to go back and save it, and then I saved it as a preset. I think I got quite close, but the volume levels were definitely louder. You can see in the channels itself that it's noticeably bigger, and it's much more full, much better. But still, did not have to do that. Currently now, I'm just to record the DI guitar part, just then I have something that's clean as possible, so then I can run that as maybe a noise gate sidechainer for the rest of the stuff, but do that later. That's mixing, that's recording. Yeah, so I mean, it's the power for the amp. I think the amp's having a little issues, it's been doing that recently. But I think that's it. We're getting close. Yeah, we're doing well. Now the next thing to do is obviously that DI signal, and we'll see how it goes. I'm really sweaty, it's boiling in here now, and because I'm really don't want that amp to be broken, but I have a feeling it's gonna have to go get looked at by someone. So yeah. Going to issues on the D channel, so I've got it on the instrument set for on the Focusrite, just because it's an line in, so might as well. And it's clipping at 0 gain. Like this gain knob is turned down as far as the gain knob can go, and it's still clipping. If I roll down the guitar knob, then I start losing tone. I don't, because it's different to the way that you do a gain. It's more right. So what I'm going to do now to try and troubleshoot that is just run it, turn off the instrument, turn my volume back up. It's quiet. It's very, very quiet. Like, I don't think we're pushing channel. It doesn't go above -50. So high I can turn it up before it starts clipping. So I think this is, yeah, so that's more like 10 o'clock. Okay, so I a little bit more like 9 o'clock-ish, and it's much happier. We're getting almost close to clipping, and I was more in the yellow on the Focusrite at the peaks. I don't see any though. Some of the peaks are very sharp, which may indicate clipping in the Focusrite, which is odd, but hey, it's the best we're gonna get, I think, at this point. I'm like fed up at this point. But yeah, this is just, yeah. So I'm through what's happening. So the first DI signal here, it's clipping, and it's, you can hearing that click, you're hearing that digital distortion click, which is disgusting, and I do not like. So the second one, the one where I turned off, and then yeah, them, not mistake that would be noticed. I'm much happier with this tone. This is the kind of DI I prefer to use, basically. Minor, inconsistencies in the playing, but I'm not playing it, am I? I might be. I don't know. But either way, it's it's good. And that was around 9:30ish kind of dial with all the other buttons turned off. But all three sounded very good, sounded much better, and it sounded kind of actually pushing above 0 dB on the for using them on 0 dB. Haven't done anything to the volume, done any processing whatsoever. Literally just ran it through Focusrite, and that's it. And we're pushing at peak 0.8 dB. So that would just be turn the volume down or something, little thing. But yeah, I was pretty happy with that. And that's a pretty DI tone, which I'll be keeping just for like a noise gate kind of thing to reduce like the hiss and stuff for the actual guitar cab. So then I'm not, having to remove all of that by myself. I'm just going to be running it through like a noise gate or something so that it cuts those hisses and stuff, because it's a very easy guitar and amp system. And also I'm not the world's best player, so, So currently look, the first 3 of the multi-tracking, like the first 3 I made that were valid to keep on this track, it was pretty good. There was no real apart from a bit of timing in the playing, but I'm not perfect, and I'm not trying to be perfect, so I'm just trying to get a rough idea of sound and tone and ideas and production and stuff, and just multi-tracking, seeing how much multi-tracking I'd need or how much would work. So currently now just looking at the 4, managed to get 4 takes of the, I'm not that impressed, to be honest. I think individually they could maybe 2 sounds good, but now I've got 4 tracks on there. It sounds, there's a lot of high end, which is obviously, I could process that out, but there is a almost painful amount of high end we're looking at. I'm working with, it's not the best sound, but I will. So I just put it on the master channel, since, I'm not really working with anything else at the moment. I put a channel EQ, doesn't go anywhere near Chris Cornell's voice, that's in its own. What it does, low cut at 60 hertz, boost at 130, at 29.5, and then just a little more at 486, -4 on that. It sounds alright. It does get rid of that high end stuff, but I'm not convinced it's the sound I want. I do want a bit more like punchy low end. So I think if I'm going to try it again, just turn off the low filters and just have it working on the high end and that like fizziness, and see if that will change anything for me. And if not, I don't really know beyond that. So yeah, it did work. Taking off those low end has improved the quality of the sound. That high end is no longer hissing and so painful. Still not perfect, and there's still a bit of like noise, which where is coming from, and I can't really fix. It may be equipment wise, may also just be it's kind of getting picked up more because we're removing certain frequencies, and certain frequencies are now becoming more prominent and the ones I don't want. But I'm going to have a look and have a little cue on the low end and see if there's anything I can do. I was watching a YouTube video recently to try and demo it. Then another one for vocals, but I'm not vocal. It was you're cutting at the same time, which is what I'm going to have a look at and see if I can do that. So you're putting a low pass frequency for a low pass, 81.5 hertz, and that was, you know, so I was -6 away from with that low pass, 6 dB or low pass at 200 hertz, with that 1Q setting or whatever. But that was pretty effective, I found. And yeah, so now, and what I did with the other one with that bell was +6 hertz, sorry, +6 dB, 3.4 on the Q thingy, and 81.5 on the frequency setting. And it sounded a lot better. It had a bit more low end, you had a bit more of that punch and oomph, but you weren't struggling to, you know, it wasn't getting, but then it also wasn't disappearing in that sense. It was noticeably less bass, but you know, also we're going to be using a pretty powerful bass. Like we're going to be doing a lot of big punchy bass because that's how the bass sounds in the song. So it could be that this just slightly over the bass, and the bass is actually a lot more of that low end yeah, I'm gonna have a tweaking and see what I can do, see what's the best thing I can do for this, and then I will be back. So I did a very, very little, I kind of tweaked a little bit, like minimal for all the other stuff I've talked about, but I have added another bell. I think it's called a bell. Please tell me if I'm just absolutely like chatting rubbish, but it's one of those single point on the channel EQ, the Logic Qs. That was kind of going to be my de-esser kind of thing, not the same way a de-esser works, but I was just trying to remove some of that hissy high ends. It didn't do it perfectly, however, so yeah, didn't touch low ends or any of that stuff that I added that channel. It was around 10,000. There was kind of like but that was mostly just a sweet spot for noticeable. Like I could still, you know, but it was better than before. It wasn't so much like you're just hearing a constant hiss. It was a bit more, just more shimmer. I ended up taking dB out at 0.27 Q, kind of, you know, just wide range. I'll take that back. It was a 0.98, so it was quite a, you know, sharp curve. And I think it's considered a de-esser, but because it's not vocals and it's a guitar, so you do want a bit of high end. Keeping the same amount of gain of reduction, but with a Q rate, Q for whatever, of 2.3, so much more, you know, smaller range of it at 7.3 thousand hertz, so a bit further up, but it seems to be much happier. It seems to not lose so much of the clarity of, you know, that 6 to 8K and also maintaining, you know, that reduction in that. I think that's mostly because it's it's mostly pulling max from anything really below, I'd say 9.5, or yeah, I'd say about 9.5. So you're not really losing such of that kind of mid-high range. Then you're reducing that kind of range where it will start hissing. It's better, it sounds a lot cleaner. Professional standard that I would be using for the project though. But that will be, you know, research will reduce the hiss, but in terms of applying techniques that Terry Date has used for this mini project I'm doing, I'm pretty happy with myself, and I think that it is an effective method of producing with a nice punchy low end. Yeah, I think I did this in the project, and I'll be showing this to my group members to enlighten them. But yeah, I think so far success in terms of what the aim was definitely to just try this out and see what it sounds like and have a go at multi-tracking, because I haven't done that in a while, like might have been 6 months or something. So it's been nice to, you know, get back onto it, do it again, but I think there's still more to go. But you know, you live and learn, so I'll just keep going at it and just keep getting better. So that's not the end of the video, it turns out. The 7, you know, the 3 line, the small little discrepancies between each recording, or each take. Low end, I'm having a lot of problem with the low end. The low end has lost all its shape and all of its punch. It just sounds like sludge, and I'm really not sure why. Maybe because I've added a bunch more, and I've added a bunch more noise, and then it's just, you know, messing with it. But it also just be something to do with the EQ. I don't know about the EQ. All 7 tracks do. I'm gonna test. I'm gonna watch the video and see what I can do, but I think this is the point where I'm just done filming myself talking about this and, you know, recording all this stuff, because it's just, and I've spent quite a while on this, so I'm trying to, you know, have a weekend and also get portfolio work done. So yeah, that'll be it for today. But successful. A lot of work, but quite successful. Again, I think I've figured it out. I think I've found something that sounds much more manageable, and it sounds much more. One of the problems is that I was trying to reduce the overall airiness of the sound, which was kind of making it sound a bit dull and a bit dry. You know, you want the point at 2900 hertz, the one I had, that was the pulling too much sound away. Still haven't fixed that fizzy hiss stuff. It's still quite wild in the high ends, and it's still quite untamed. I think that the hiss was coming for kind of making the hit of 5 instead of -6, just having a bit less reduction. Then for that's 80 hertz point, 60, I'm up at 12 dB of gain, and that has made a difference. You actually have a punchier low end, and it's not so muddy. It's still soundy because of the way I've played it and the way that I'm just, you know, but it sounds so much better, and I'm so much more happy with it. So I'm going to be bouncing this down, and this is going to be up on the project. So yeah. So I've just finished up. See what I can do with it. As can be seen here on the guitar channel, you can see that the guitar channel itself is the send channel, is the bus channel, but inside that there are 2 more. And basically the reason I've done that is to give myself control over not only the, you know, the quieter and the louder part issue, but to be able to use those, it gives me the ability to tweak each one. So I was able to bring the volume level up, bring the volume of the quieter ones up, which really helps. It helps have a bit more like flexibility and essentially just more channels that were all kind of equalish volume, instead of having, you know, one loud, one quiet, drown out the quiet and lose all of that. I found it quite useful to do that, purely for the sake of adding more tracks. I did towards the end kind of lose the sight of the goal, just going more towards just peak loudness and just volume and punch. I feel I did make it punchier, I made it quite powerful. I feel listening back to the original track now, the original actual Soundgarden track, it's a lot more, there's a lot less hunt in the original track. And it also sounds more high gain, if that makes sense. And I'm not quite sure. It might be a mix of both, but I think for generally speaking, there's more fuzz than there is high gain noise. If that sense. So yeah, I passed it. It was quite panning left, but what I did with the left and right hard pans is that I changed the EQ slightly on the left and right side to give that idea of 2 different guitars being played. Even though it's the same guitar and me playing the same guitar, yes, they're different tracks, they're different takes, but it's still me playing the same guitar, you know? It's like, it's not good, it's not letting some, like, say Liam or something to come in and do 4 tracks, you know? We'd sound totally different, he's got a different guitar and a different style. So I did that just to try and like heavy, that it's all out of the guitar. It seems more like the guitar low end than the bass itself, but it is the bass because it is that kind of sound, if that makes any sense. Which may be due to like, size of the amp or a distortion, but what I can gather is there's very minimal distortion used by the bassist, so it may have just been, you know, guitar, like that sign, the idea of, you know, the guitar being guitar pan left, guitar pan right, kind of that crunchiness is kind of going in a bit, and it's kind of taking over the top layer of the bass, whereas and then didn't process where I wanted my volume level to be. I set them at like 0 dB, I think. And what I did is brought the guitars up from 0 to kind of match that and make that volume level. The issue being that when I decided to then put a emitter on it, because it was, you know, going slightly over 0 and damage any speakers, it was about 2 dB for the sake of just kind of gluing everything together. It was one of those, you know, that like the LA2A is the Logic vintage Octo, which is the LA2A kind of vibe, I think. That was actually high ratio. I found it was a 4.6 ratio and a 22 dB threshold, but it had a very fast attack and release. It was actually taken from the high gain set. Then I switched the compressor type over to the octo, changed the ratio a bit on the makeup because that was at plus ridiculous, and yeah, and it sounds pretty, be totally honest, but I'm gonna have to see what my peers think in terms of likeness to the original track, because I am aware that there is a lot more high end in the guitar than there really should be, but that could just be an amp setting, and that was, you know, thing with this amp that may just blow up in my face. I'm not really sure what's happening with it. But yeah, I think in the studio to try and create that sound, but I think I will be, yeah, I'll try to do a lot of stuff, seeing if that will work with it. At some point I might end up just bringing that in and just using that as like a example, or just seeing if that's anything relevant, if we can get a tone sounding right. But at the same time, Liam's guitar is very different to mine, so it's much more aggressive, bitey metal pickups. I don't know, it kind of blew away. They're good for me. They're very low output though. That's the difference, is that mine aren't an active system, mine aren't a metal system. Mine is kind of rock, blues, anything you want, kind of Yamaha style. I think it works for me. It means I'm able to, you know, choose the way it goes a bit more, but I think for Liam's guitar, we're gonna have to go through this again, possibly, of finding, you know, the sweet spots for his in reference to the track itself. But overall, I think this has really helped me just get a concept of what I'm trying to do down a little bit better, a little bit more. You know, I'm just trying to get it all at this point and just try and understand what is going on. But yeah, been listening back to all the bits on a little bit later on the computer. Same headphones, just different computer. I don't know why it's a little different, but it works. And the tone is all off. It's totally off. The only one that sounds good is the mixed final MP3, which I think is the one prior to the final one. It doesn't sound great. There's too much on the amp in the first place. It sounds too thrash metally. It needs to sound a bit more stonery. I think so that means it needs more mids, less trash. I think it was a pretty good attempt and pretty good idea, but there's too much high end and there's just too much painful high end. It's not enjoyable, so I'm gonna have to have a go at that tomorrow, I reckon, because it's like good process, good way to figure out. And then I've just been kind of doing a bit more research. I've definitely overcompressed it because it just is. It sounds overcompressed. Terry Date doesn't overcompress his stuff like EBT, you know, because as you do. The things he said about the production was that the guitars are wide but not washed, so that makes sense. And that's kind of what I've got. Kind of went and got. I think what I could do is bring down the stereo field a little bit, not have it, you know, so panned, but at the same time, I think it's a pretty good mix. But that's what I mean, just doing multi-tracks and having a bit more of like a full sound, going for a couple more takes throughout, and that might work better than having like a hard pan left and right. Yeah. So, and then